Thank you to Simthic, accessible via sim.gg for the weapon stats used in making this video. Link in the description. Hello, this is another video in a series I've been calling Final Meta, an exploration into Battlefield 5 infantry weapons after the final content release. In this video, I'll be covering the 3 SMGs with the best possible bullet velocity: the MP34, MAB38, and one I've technically covered before in the aimed strafing SMGs video, this ZK383, but more briefly and just with an alternative build. These are the SMGs that generally have improved range as a result of their superior bullet velocity if given the correct upgrades, making them almost feel like assault rifles in terms of their ballistics. In terms of the rest of the SMGs, unlike the head-shooting SMGs, these guns have somewhat worse recoil and faster firing rates, making headshots somewhat less emphasized. Unlike the aimed strafing SMGs, don't have access to lightened stock and custom stock at the same time. Instead, they are generally better fired stationary. As for why, that is something I'll get into more once I talk about the upgrade trees. Starting off my suggestions, I recommend the Field Medic combat role. While these SMGs do tend to emphasize ranged combat slightly more, much like the headshot SMGs and to a lesser degree aimed strafing SMGs, just like those categories, I still believe that you should generally emphasize getting to the front line with them, and you can achieve that more effectively with the ability to call out downed friendlies to catch up to that front line with a faster sprint. This ultimately is more useful than an increased melee range and an emergency sprint boost that only kicks in when you are nearly dead. As for sights, I generally advise the iron sight for both SMGs. They provide maximum zoom and ADS speed, and the irons are clear and precise enough for the respective ranges you'll be using them. The visual recoil, generally speaking, never gets in the way for medium ranged engagements, and headshots aren't generally as important with these SMGs that one would want to sacrifice zoom for a more open sight picture. If you do want to use the Lati sights, they are also a suitable choice. For melee weapons, I suggest the hand tool. Much like most weapons, these guns mesh well with the hand tools because their damage profile brings targets to half health after 2 hits or 1 headshot in close range, making the hand tools good for quick finishing moves when you're in melee range. As for gadgets, I generally advise the standard build of smoke grenades, bandages, and smoke grenade rifle. While the SMGs can still operate at longer ranges decently well, they are still generally outclassed by basically any long-range class of weapon, like bolt actions or semi-autos, and are given a run for their money against assault rifles and LMGs at mid-range. Using the frag grenades and AP mines is a fine choice in small maps like Al Marj Encampment and Operation Underground, as smoke's ability to reduce the engagement range becomes redundant, and the closer quarters and choke points can make explosives potent weapons. My suggested sidearm for these SMGs is the P08. The P08 shares the trait of having improved bullet velocity compared to other semi-auto pistols, while also providing a notably faster swap time than the Model 27 and a much better ammo reliability than the M1912 because of its much faster reloads, both being the only other sidearms with fast bullet velocities. For these SMGs, I generally recommend builds that render their kill capacities fairly weak, so the quicker access to firepower with good ammo reliability that more closely matches the ballistic performance is the best bet. If you go against my suggested upgrade tree and select the extended magazine upgrades, my suggestion changes to the Model 27, however. And that gets into the upgrade trees themselves. For the MAB38, I suggest all right side of the tree. This results in high velocity bullets, ported barrel, barrel bedding, and custom stock. The main reason the gun is even in this particular video, high velocity bullets, gives the gun an absolutely massive upgrade statistically speaking, from a measly 345 meters per second to a whopping 560 meters per second. That is a giant 62% increase in bullet velocity. And the mere 15% boost in reload speed is almost a joke in comparison. To top it off, the bullet drag is also reduced. The next two upgrades largely follow from that, enhancing accuracy, especially while stationary, to better exploit the weapon's improved velocity. The last upgrade is actually one I'm somewhat less committed to. See, without lightened stock, custom stock is a somewhat less useful upgrade, as you don't strafe fast enough to reasonably dodge, and if you do strafe, you simply undermine the much better accuracy gains from barrel bedding. It still overall works to minimize accuracy loss on those occasions you creep around corners with the gun already aimed and ready. If you find yourself using this weapon in more close quarters maps though, switch to enhanced grips. A tighter hip fire is more useful in that case, though still note you should try and use the weapon for longer sightlines, even in those maps, otherwise you might as well use a different SMG. For the upgrade tree for the MP34, I suggest right, left, right, resulting in high velocity bullets, enhanced grips, light bolt, and barrel bedding. The MP34 is unique in that at ranges beyond 75 meters, it always takes one less bullet to kill your target compared to most other SMGs. As a result, you want to capitalize on this range flexibility as much as possible. High velocity bullets in that respect makes more sense than quick aim, as it's precisely at the longer ranges where that bullet velocity has the greatest impact to further exploit the damage increase. This is also why the last upgrade, barrel bedding, makes sense. Reaching the absolute maximum accuracy, even if it requires you to stand still, takes the best advantage of the MP34's strengths. So, then, you might be asking, why not ported barrel and extended magazine? Well, ported barrel's usefulness is questionable. The MP34's side-to-side recoil is already fairly low. An extended magazine is more useful when you get in close range more often or at the front lines, as ammo reliability becomes more of a premium in that case. If you are trying to keep your range to take advantage of the better damage and velocity, its usefulness becomes more questionable. On the other hand, having the fastest firing rate improves your time to kill over all ranges, even longer range where the recoil is more in question, precisely because the MP34's recoil is already nice and low. The enhanced grips largely is just icing on the cake, making the MP34 perform a bit more like any classic SMG should in very close ranges, decently well despite its still lower than average rate of fire. That said, the MP34 can be used with all right side, assuming you're using it in very long range maps and you go prone a lot and aim for headshots with its more sluggish rate of fire but increased damage. It's also notable that the MP34's alternative final upgrade, the bayonet, is unique in this case, as no other SMGs have such an option. If you do decide to build around that, go all left side and use the bayonet frequently to super sprint towards downed friendlies, as you will move even faster than just with the callout speed boost that the field medic combat role grants. And if you find yourself surprised by an enemy just behind a smoke cloud, you can also get a quick one-hit kill, while still potentially having a full magazine to fight with. And finally, the ZK383 gets a short revisit. Assuming you go all right side of the ZK383's tree, you essentially get an entirely different weapon than my previously advised build with a much slower rate of fire, significantly reduced recoil, and a much larger magazine, and a bullet velocity that matches the other two SMG builds in this video. This build is much less popular than its aimed strafing brother, and for good reason. A pitifully slow time to kill, poor handling with a slower reload, slower aimed movement, and slower aim down sight time. But the strengths it gains makes it technically the SMG with the best accuracy of any SMG when combined with its bipod, and that is precisely when a faster velocity would come into play. You basically have to get headshots with this build to be competitive, and even then, using the bipod leaves you painfully vulnerable to bolt-action snipers and rushers. Using this on smaller maps will result in you getting swarmed and stomped with faster firing SMGs and one-hit kill shotguns. Larger maps will result you in simply losing long-range gunfights fairly consistently unless you get the drop on your opponent and play very conservatively. Though its fantastic ammo reliability can help the slower time to kill by spamming bullets frequently and pre-firing when the enemy is already aware of you. Also, as a result of its good ammo reliability, you should switch the P08 for a Repetir pistol M1912. It's an interesting build that is worth playing around with at least once for the curious, but I'd not say it's a good build compared to the alternative. Getting back to the other two SMGs, they both can work well if you find yourself in maps with longer sightlines, or maybe you want to switch to semi-auto, or go prone, or both, and aim for headshots at the farther extent of these SMGs' ranges, as the reduced recoil from doing so can make these fairly effective at obtaining headshots in conjunction with the faster bullet velocity. And in the case of the MP34, you'll get one less bullet to kill to boot than usual compared to other standard SMG damage profiles. That said, they benefit similarly to standing still and firing like the head shooting SMGs, but their higher recoil makes it generally better to not worry too much about headshots, and instead you should try to simply go for longer sightlines overall. Use the MAB-38 when you generally find yourself creeping around corners more with your weapon already aimed, resulting in an SMG that is better at more medium ranges. The damage implies that you can use the MP34 at basically any range, at least competently, making it a very flexible build. Be ready to swap to your sidearm, however, fairly frequently in either case, as the ammo reliability of the MAB-38 and MP34 is some of the worst in the SMG class with these builds. The only SMG worse off, in fact, is the Suomi Lightbolt build. You can also mitigate this by generally keeping your distance from the center of combat, waiting for visual confirmation of your target before firing, getting headshots, and sticking to teammates that can cover for the weapon's somewhat long and frequent reloads. The time to kill is generally fairly middling to slow for these SMGs, except for the fact that the MP34 kills significantly faster, on average beyond 75 meters. Technically, there are other SMGs with faster theoretical times at such ranges, but those weapons lack the accuracy or velocity to be usable that far out. They have a slight inclination to work best at middle ranges overall. In conclusion, when you want your SMGs to be more like assault rifles, capable of a broader swath of ranges, and are willing to sacrifice ammo reliability for it, these are your best bet. They are the jack of all trades, master of none of the SMGs, stretching themselves out to play at a role SMGs aren't normally best for, and doing a reasonable job of doing it. Thank you for watching my video to the end. Please like, comment, subscribe, and click the bell for notifications.